Welcome into the Wilt Fong Whip Around for a special live edition episode. It's January 5th. We are 4 days into the transfer portal window, and with that, I bring in our transfer portal ace, the most plugged-in guy in the industry this time of year. It's Pistol Pete Nakos. Pete, thanks for jumping in with me on the Whip Around today. Let's just jump right into it. Brendan Sorsby off the board, one of the most coveted quarterbacks in the transfer portal. When you start talking about our college level sources, he picks Texas Tech over LSU yesterday. How did it all go down?
Yeah, so Brendan Sorsby arrives on a visit to Texas Tech on Friday, spends some good time with Joey McGuire and the staff. He then leaves on Saturday, right? Goes and takes a visit to LSU. We don't know how things shape up, but then he leaves LSU without committing to the Tigers. And at that point, it started to come together very clearly that he was going to be the next quarterback at Texas Tech. He's going to sign a deal with the Red Raiders that'll pay him around the $5 million mark in 2026. And Texas Tech gets one of the more proven, experienced quarterbacks on the market and someone they believe can help lead them to a national title.
Now, Pete, he chose the school that we thought he was going to choose when it was rumored that he was going into the transfer portal. But LSU gave us some pause. They got him to campus. Now, he was originally scheduled to go to LSU first. Texas Tech, I'm told, at 1 a.m. was able to flip that script, get him to Lubbock first. LSU was then able to still get him to stick to a visit to LSU. And I'm also told that the Tigers were in the ballpark from an NIL standpoint also. Just that connection with Texas Tech, what Joey McGuire and company are doing on the field, top 10 scoring offense, top 10 scoring defense, culture in the locker room. Brendan Sorsby, per your report, calls Pat Mahomes, tells him he's coming to Texas Tech to win a national championship. Obviously, they have the investment off the field. You're not in these conversations if you don't have a product on the field that guys want to play in. Now they're getting the support off the field. They have Brendan Sorsby in the fold, and we'll have more on Texas Tech here later in the show, but let's stay with quarterbacks. Let's pivot to Sam Leavitt. You and I both reporting that he is visiting LSU this week. Just before going live, we now have a story on On3 and on the Bengal Tiger where I reported that he will be at LSU around 1 Central Time. It's going to be about a day and a half visit. And we know that LSU was all in on Sorsby, also all in on Leavitt. How do you see this shaping up with the number one ranked overall player in the transfer portal per On3's rankings?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, Steve, is yesterday we were expecting Sam Leavitt to arrive at Texas Tech, right? We thought that the Red Raiders were going to go all in on Leavitt if they couldn't get Brendan Sorsby. And it turns out travel delays, whatever you want to call it, Sam Leavitt never arrives at Texas Tech coming off that Kentucky visit. He's now expected at LSU. And what we're hearing, Steve, is that the Tigers are in pole position to try to close out this recruitment. And they've made very clear that they are willing to spend what is necessary to get a quarterback of Sam Leavitt's caliber. Obviously, there's some concerns about his injuries and when he'd be able to go in spring practice. That's something a lot of programs are monitoring. But at the end of the day, a lot of these, LSU, Kentucky, Miami, there's been some mentions of Oregon. If Dante Moore goes to the NFL, there's a belief that Sam Leavitt is probably the most experienced and top available quarterback, and LSU and Lane Kiffin are going to do whatever it takes to try to get him to land in Baton Rouge.
I get the sense that there is a lot of confidence around LSU based on conversation that they've had with the Leavitt camp that they can ultimately land him. But I feel the same around Kentucky, who got the first visit from Sam Leavitt. We were first to report Kentucky becoming a major contender from Sam Leavitt, and sounds like by all accounts that was a great visit, and he believes in the direction of that program under Will Stein and company. And they have the support to go get Sam Leavitt on the financial side as well. But LSU, it's their serve with Sam Leavitt, and we'll see if they can't close this out over the next 36 hours. And they're trying to get some positive momentum to build off of in the transfer portal on their end. A guy I want to ask you about next, Pete.
Yeah.
DJ Lagway, former Florida quarterback. We had the report that Florida State was getting him on campus for a visit this week. We certainly are keeping a keen eye on Baylor. Clemson's a school that I've heard mentioned as one to maybe watch for DJ Lagway. Now, that was early on. And then there were schools we were monitoring if their quarterbacks didn't re-sign.
Yes.
Texas A&M was maybe the main one. If Marcel Reed, if something went sideways there, I could have seen them getting in on the DJ Lagway sweepstakes. But how do you see this recruitment going right now for the former Gatorade National Player of the Year out of the high school ranks?
Yeah, so DJ Lagway is currently in Tallahassee, right, on Florida State's campus. Sources tell on 3 that following the Florida State visit, he's going to take a visit to Virginia. And from there, he's going to continue to evaluate this quarterback market. I would say that at this point, this recruitment is kind of far from over. He's definitely going to evaluate some further options. You mentioned Clemson, Baylor still in the market for a quarterback. They brought in Ashton Daniels for a visit recently. I think that DJ Lagway really wants to go somewhere where he feels like he can be developed in the NFL prospect that he believes he can be. And that means really taking the time to sit down with some coaches and really try to make the decision that's going to set him up for the next 2 to 10 years.
Now, if you're Florida State, you love the idea of landing a talented player like DJ Lagway. But if I'm DJ Lagway, I'm looking at this from the lens of I just went to Florida. It was a program that was clearly in a rebuilding mode when I opted to go to Florida. He chose Florida over USC, chose Florida over Clemson, Texas A&M, among others. It didn't work out on the field. He didn't play to the potential that we thought he had in Gainesville, although he showed flashes. So I love the idea of Virginia for DJ Lagway based on where the market's at today. Pete, you're talking about a program on the rise under Coach Tony Elliott. They played in the ACC title game this year. He's walking into a situation where there's a good culture, a proven head coach that's been around Trevor Lawrence and some other talented quarterbacks on the college level. That opportunity to walk into a stable situation instead of an unstable situation yet again would be something that would be very interesting to me. But we'll see what continues to happen with DJ Lagway.
The other wrinkle here, right, with Virginia is that quarterback Chandler Morris is trying to get an extra year of eligibility. It's unclear where the confidence level is on that. And the other thing that you need to know now about Chandler Morris in this Virginia quarterback situation is that his father, Chad Morris, who took the year off, just got the Clemson offensive coordinator job. And it won't be a surprise if the Tigers evaluate the quarterback market.
Yeah. Speaking of quarterbacks, Indiana, Pete, is red hot in the transfer portal right now. And they went out over the weekend and landed the guy that they would rank number 1 in their transfer portal rankings, Josh Hoover from TCU. Now, he's going to the school that we thought he was going to the moment we heard that his name would end up in the transfer portal. But provide some insight on how the Hoosiers were able to get it done, as I think that was one where the NIL number was moving up and up and up throughout the weekend.
Yeah, we always, since we, started to hear the murmurs that Josh Hoover was going to go in the transfer portal, always kind of associated him with Indiana from the intel that Steve and I were hearing. But this thing wasn't like a done deal the minute he went in the portal. Yes, Indiana got him on campus. Yes, the deal's done and he is going to be a Hoosier. But sources had indicated that negotiations were ongoing up to the minute that his commitment was announced. And Indiana wasn't the only player here. Ole Miss was working really hard to get him on campus. He was supposed to be in Oxford on Monday, today. But it turns out that Josh Hoover is going to land at Indiana and that the Rebels are going to hold on to Trinidad Chambliss if his extra year of eligibility is approved.
There was a story over the weekend. Kurt Signetti quoted that transfer portal recruiting took him away 4 hours from game planning for Oregon in the Peach Bowl this weekend, a rematch between the Ducks and Hoosiers in the college football semifinal. But it was a weekend in the transfer portal that sets the Hoosiers up to make a run at the college football playoff for a 3rd straight year. Next year, they landed Josh Hoover, who's obviously the jewel, but 7 commitments for Indiana this weekend to date so far. Joshua Burnham from Notre Dame was one of them. Chidi Obiazar is in the fold from Kansas State. Toby Ososami, a big pickup on the edge for Indiana as well. And probably the second biggest pickup, Nick Marsh, a proven receiver from Michigan State that was garnering major interest. LSU, Notre Dame, the Michigan Wolverines, among others. And Nick Marsh settles with Indiana following a visit to the Hoosiers campus. They're really the season, what they're doing on the field, obviously resonating with the top players in the portal, Pete.
Yeah, the other big pickup for them is Turbo Richard, the Boston College running back, and it just seems like along with the quarterback position, Curt Cignetti and Indiana continue to find talent at the running back position. That's been the case this year and last year. And Indiana is really setting the table for another national title run in 2026. And it's wild to say a statement like that when they're also in the college football playoff semifinals and have a chance to win the first national title of the Curt Cignetti era.
Well, Pete, coming out of the Rose Bowl win, I'd never talked to so many 4- and 5-star recruits about Indiana, and that has changed with each week. Each week I said that throughout the fall. But so many blue chippers have Indiana on the radar now because of the season that they're having. I don't think the seasons are going to change much about their philosophy on the recruiting trail. Yeah, they'll shoot their shot with more regionally based Rivals 300 recruits and try and make an impact with those guys. But I think where the results on the field are really going to resonate are in the transfer portal, where they're clearly getting the support from a financial standpoint to make a run at the Josh Hoovers and the Nick Marshes of the world. And Curt Cignetti said when I visited him before the first game of his first season at IU, hey, we have the support here at Indiana to compete in the Big Ten. And me living in the Hoosier State for most of my life, take it with a grain of salt. They haven't been relevant ever. But now they are the top team in the country. You can see the support going out into the portal and landing guys like Josh Hoover and Nick Marsh. We're going to be talking a lot about Indiana in the transfer portal window for years to come. One more guy I want to ask you about regarding the Hoosiers before we pivot. Parker Livingston, former Texas receiver. If they could add him to Marsh, that'd be quite the duo to replace the talented guys they have on the roster leaving following this, what they hope to be a national title run.
Yeah, so the interesting thing here with Parker Livingstone is there's a connection there with Josh Hoover. He went on a visit to Indiana over the weekend. There was some confidence going in that Indiana could close this out. The confidence level for the Hoosiers isn't as high as you would think. He's now going to, visit Oklahoma. And there's some confidence there that the Sooners will have a good chance and add another piece on the, on the outside for John Mateer. I also won't be surprised if, Parker Livingstone throws in another visit. I don't know that to be a factor or anything. I just know that Indiana, Oklahoma are definitely doing everything they can to get them locked in and committed.
Absolutely. Well, Indiana, some of their transfer portal wins were huge in this run to the college football semifinal. None bigger than their Heisman Trophy winner, quarterback Mendoza, who is leading this team into the rematch against Oregon. Texas Tech was another program, Pete, that did a phenomenal job in the transfer portal last year. And those guys helped catapult this program into the Big 12 champions and into a college football playoff bye before they eventually succumbed to Oregon last week. But they want to make a run towards a national championship. Brendan Sorsby commits on Sunday to the Red Raiders, choosing to play for Joey McGuire and Texas Tech over LSU. You with the report, he is the new $5 million man for Texas Tech. But he called Pat Mahomes, Cody Campbell, and those guys and said, hey, I'm coming there to win a national championship, and they need more dudes out of the transfer portal to take that next leap. Top 10 scoring offense, top 10 scoring defense. They look like they're on track to be the new Clemson, but to be the new Clemson, you have to win a game like the one they just played against Oregon in the postseason. And they have some guys on the list that can help them take it further down the road, and that starts with the number one receiver in the transfer portal, Chaz Coleman. Some major contenders in that one. Texas got the first visit. You reported Texas A&M getting the second visit. We are expecting future trips with Texas Tech and USC, Alabama rounding out the top 5. We're hearing, I'm not sleeping on Texas Tech. I think there's some confidence in Lubbock that they get it done with Chaz Coleman. And talking to another source with knowledge of the recruitment, they said that Texas Tech will handle what they have to handle to make that happen. And certainly they have the product on the field, but there was confidence in Austin. What are you hearing around Austin, College Station right now, and Lubbock for Chaz Coleman?
Yeah, so as of 10 a.m. Central, he was still on the Texas A&M campus, wrapping up some conversations with coaches. The expectation is Chaz Coleman's supposed to get there tomorrow. at Texas Tech, and then from there, UFC's expecting him later in the week. Here's what we know about Cam Coleman. He's going to command a deal in the $2 million range at least. By far the highest paid wide receiver in the transfer portal. Texas has confidence. A&M has some confidence. Tech has confidence. The bottom line is Cam Coleman isn't looking for the biggest bag. He wants to play somewhere where he feels like he's in a productive offense or a quarterback can efficiently get him the football. You can make the argument that all three, actually all four, including USC, have those quarterbacks. I think that's why those four schools are in it. And we'll kind of see how this thing plays out. I know Texas Tech has some confidence, but I also talked to folks at Texas this morning who felt like their visit in Austin with Cam Coleman went extremely well, and A&M's trying to put the final touches on his time in College Station. So this is going to be one that we're going to continue to follow. I think throughout the week. We'll see if he gets to Tech. We'll see if he gets to USC. I fully expect him to right now. But when you're talking about a wide out and a top transfer like this, you're kind of always taking it day by day.
Yeah, Pete, Cam Coleman's the number 2 overall player in the On3 industry transfer portal rankings. Brendan Sorsby checks in at number 6. And Texas Tech has a great shot to land the number 1 defensive lineman in the portal, number 9 overall, Mateen Ibrigoba out of Wake Forest. I have a prediction in for Texas Tech. You had an insider there today. Where do things stand with Mateen?
Yeah, so he's going to take some other visits, right? Tennessee's in the mix, Notre Dame. But Texas Tech feels good. They felt good about this one from the start. They've already picked up a commitment from San Diego State edge Trey White, who, On3 has as one of the top pass rushers in the portal. Beyond that too, they're also adding other talent at the wide receiver position. They brought in some other guys too to really try to build up that room. So if Cam Coleman goes there, that a defense that faces Texas Tech is going to have to deal with some other weapons in that offense with Brendan Sorsby.
Texas Tech also on a bit of a roll here in the transfer portal cycle. Who do you see? Do you see anyone else joining in the near future? Guys like Trey White and Davin Martin have already popped today for the Red Raiders. Bryce Butler was a big win for them on the defensive line, getting him from Washington today as well. Are we on watch with anybody else with Texas Tech moving forward?
Just running through my there's one other really big fish out there for Texas Tech. There's Wendell Gregory, the Oklahoma State transfer. I've logged a prediction for the Red Raiders to land him. He's a former South Carolina transfer, led Oklahoma State in tackles for loss. There's a belief in the Texas Tech building that they can get this done. And they also feel like he is like the next stud pass rusher in college football. That's what, James Blanchard told me. So we'll see if Texas Tech can wrap that thing up. But they love the idea of what Wendell Gregory would add to that defense.
Well, Indiana and Texas Tech are rolling, Pete. LSU is trying to get off and running this transfer portal cycle. They have Hawaii receiver Jackson Harris in the fold, but Sam Leavitt is the big target on the board. We've obviously talked about him at the top of the show, the number 1 rated player in the transfer portal, set to arrive in Baton Rouge in about 90 minutes. He's already visited Kentucky. Talked to a source today around LSU. Them in Kentucky are the programs they're hearing the most about. I asked about Miami specifically. We'll see what happens with Oregon. Their focus is on getting Dante Moore to return to Eugene. I continue to hear that is a possibility. Obviously, he's competing for a national championship this year. Has a chance to hear his name called early in the NFL draft, but there's some legacy play, chance to win a Heisman Trophy at Oregon, and then certainly getting the finances in order to keep Dante Moore as well. But Sam Leavitt, an Oregon native, perhaps Oregon, if the national title game is one day after the transfer portal closes, so things are going to come to a head with Oregon and their transfer portal quarterback if they need to go that route or not. But in the meantime, what are you hearing on Leavitt and the contenders going into today's visit?
Yeah, so, Sam Leavitt's going to arrive at LSU like you've reported. Kentucky has some confidence. They felt like that visit went really well. I think Miami's a dark horse here. Miami is so locked in on trying to win this semifinal against Ole Miss, get to the national title game. The Hurricanes are definitely trying to keep some transfer stuff under wraps, and that has made it difficult to fully understand how much they're in the mix for Sam Leavitt. Beyond all that too, like you mentioned, like Oregon wants Dante Moore to return. but at the same time, he's on every draft big board, and he'd probably be a top 10 pick at this point. So that's what Oregon's kind of working through right now. I tell you that we'll see how things go today at LSU with Sam Leavitt. From speaking with sources, it's been made very clear that Lane Kiffin loves the idea of what Sam Leavitt would look like in his offense. And I've also had some people bring up too that Sam Leavitt and Jackson Dart obviously have some comparable, comparisons to how they play the game of football and at the quarterback position. So I think that would really be a strong fit for Lane Kiffin and LSU from everything I've heard.
If Sam Leavitt chooses Kentucky or goes elsewhere over LSU, are you hearing any other quarterbacks that the Tigers could go in on?
Yeah, there's other names out there, but right now I think the full focus is on Sam Leavitt at LSU, and we'll see where things go from there.
And we're just talking about the currently available quarterbacks in the transfer portal market right now when we're talking about LSU. LSU's in on some other major targets, none bigger than the number one edge rusher in the On3 transfer portal rankings, Chaz Coleman. The Tigers got the first visit from Coleman, a Penn State transfer. Now, when we originally heard Chaz Coleman's name, Pete, you were first to report. Keep an eye on Ohio State. He's an Ohio native, and certainly corroborated that, heard that on my end. The day the transfer portal window opened, I was pretty surprised. I thought I was going to make one phone call. This guy's still trending heavy to Ohio State and to check the box. But no, LSU and Tennessee, the bar moved. The price tag went up on Chaz Coleman. I think it was even surprising to some in Ohio State. In Ohio State, and you can speak to that in a second, but he had a great visit to LSU over the weekend. He arrived at Tennessee late last night. He's going to be on the Vols campus into tomorrow. And then you had the report that Ohio State will get him later this week. Now, I just know from covering Ohio State on the high school front, I've seen them close strong, and I've seen them find a way at the end to win out, whether it was beating Alabama for Edric Houston, holding off Oregon and others for Chris Henry Jr., to just winning a massive 2027 recruitment for David DJ Jacobs, who woke up that morning silently committed to Miami and by the evening committed to Ohio State. So you tell me he's visiting Ohio State, I am in on the Buckeyes.
So here's the plan. He's at Tennessee right now. Ohio State's expecting him tomorrow. That price tag is well over the $1 million mark at this point.
Yeah, I heard it's gone up about 500,000 since the portal opened.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how things play out there. There was some confidence, though, with LSU yesterday that they could close it out, but he's decided to go on and take a couple more visits. From talking to some sources, there's a lot of belief that Chaz Coleman could come in and be an impact player. Obviously, he has a ton of raw talent. All three programs in the mix believe that they can help develop him and take him to the next level. Obviously, Jim Knowles from his time at Penn State has a relationship with Chaz Coleman, but Ohio State has that too from high school recruiting.
Yeah. Eugene Hilton, Wisconsin transfer from Indianapolis, his dad, T.Y. Hilton. He's someone I'm told is very high on LSU since entering the transfer portal. Do you have a name or two that LSU fans can also follow along with here as this transfer portal window continues to heat up?
Yeah. The UAB transfer, the UAB transfer wide receiver, Xavier Iverson, I believe his name is. There's a lot of names to track in the portal.
No doubt.
But LSU's looking to add multiple wide receivers in the portal. They're also going to have to bring in quite a few offensive linemen. So that will be interesting to follow along.
Pete, let's end the show with Tennessee. We talked about Chaz Coleman in the LSU section, but the Tennessee Vols have some elite transfer portal prospects on campus this week as Josh Heupel and company look to bounce back from a season that came in below expectations. They want to return to the college football playoff and make a run. They got some guys visiting this weekend that can help. That starts with the number one edge in the On3 industry transfer portal rankings, Chaz Coleman. His relationship with Coach Knowles, Anthony Poindexter. I think Tennessee was one of the programs that helped move this NIL price tag, along with LSU. Ohio State also very much in play. Tennessee, what are you hearing on their side about where things staying with Chaz Coleman. I think they were excited. He just made it out of Baton Rouge and is now on their campus for 2 days.
Yeah, they definitely are happy that he made it to Knoxville. And you know, there's some confidence there because he did make it to Knoxville. And that's not the only transfer prospect, though, that Tennessee's trending for. We logged a prediction this morning for LSU offensive lineman Ori Williams to land at Tennessee. I apologize about that. He took a visit. They feel good. He was supposed to make it to Auburn. That's not going to come together. And it really seems like things are heading in the right direction for the Volunteers, adding a key offensive lineman.
Yeah, another Penn State transfer on campus this week, Xavier Gillum. He is the number 22 player at his position in the transfer portal rankings, the number 6 linebacker, Kamori House, a North Carolina transfer. Zylan Perry, I believe you got a call before we went live that Tennessee is trending for the running back out of Louisiana Lafayette. And they're getting their shot on Wednesday with the number 1 defensive lineman in the transfer portal, Mateen Ibiragba. I haven't predicted the Texas Tech, but what are you hearing on the Tennessee side here?
Yeah, you know, I think Tennessee has some confidence because at this point they're expecting him to make it to campus. We'll see, you know, how things play out from there. Talking to some sources, though, there's a lot of belief that he can come in wherever he goes and make a huge impact right away. It's why we have him as a top-ranked interior defensive lineman in the portal, a defensive tackle. So Tennessee has some confidence. We'll see. Obviously, whenever Texas Tech's involved, the price tag's going to be a lot higher than expected. So that's something that Tennessee's going to have to sort through.
Mm-hmm. Well, that will do it with the transfer portal part of the Wiltfong Whip Around episode today. I know we're live, but do we want to sub in Josh Newber? You getting a thumbs up or not? Are we going to talk some high school? Are we going to end the show right here? What are they saying behind you?
I want my shot. I want my shot on the Wiltfong Whip Around. So let's talk a little high school.
Well, let's say thanks to, was that a proper send-off for Pistol Pete Nakos there? I mean, like, thanks. You know, there he is, Pete. Check him out on3.com. All the intel from the transfer portal. It's been fun working the first 4 days with you, buddy. Thanks for coming on I think this is the first ever live Wiltfong Whip Around, man. So excited. Yeah. Appreciate you doing it. And we'll talk to you soon, brother.
You bet. Thanks, Steve.
Unbelievable, man. 2 portal goats on the same. I was just in awe. I was sitting here. I forgot that I was even going to come on and talk a little high school recruiting, just watching you guys tear it up on portal intel. Pretty awesome. So make sure you guys hit subscribe because you never know when we're going to go live. With this portal stuff, Steve, we almost have to go live. The intel, it doesn't stay long, you know, a couple hours and things change dramatically. But let's circle back on recruiting. I want to talk some USC. You had a phenomenal article today in the Wiltfong Whip Around, the print version of it, which you can go to rivals.com and read. But USC, in the midst of landing all these portal players, and they are hot, they just picked up a wide receiver from NC State, but they are also zeroing in on potentially back-to-back number 1 classes. Steve, right now, who is USC trending for at the high school level?
Well, they're in the mix for quite a few. Now, I think it's going to be a much smaller class for USC in 2027, Josh. They had 35 players put pen to paper for the Trojans in 2026. So that's essentially signing 2 classes in one, but they are in the mix for some of their most coveted targets in 2027. They don't have a commit yet, but by the end of the week, I think they'll have their first one. The number 9 cornerback in the country, Aaron Washington out of Santa Ana Mater Dei, is going to announce his college plans during the Navy All-America Bowl on NBC on Saturday. And I like where Aaron Washington's trending. I've joined colleagues Greg Biggins, Adam Gorney, and Scott Schrader in predicting him to USC. He has strongly considered some other programs, but USC is the one trending going into his live announcement. They are doing well in the secondary overall. Still really like where they stand with Duvet Williams, the number 4 cornerback in the country out of Junipero Serra. Have him forecasted to land at Southern Cal. Some other guys that they're really pushing for at the position, Georgia commit Dante Wright. Now, Oregon is also heavily involved in that one. Jalen Hill is a 4-star cornerback that USC's always had major traction with. Some safeties, Danny Lang, Jaden Apprecio Bailey, and Gabe Jenkins from the Pennsylvania area. Those are a few more defensive backs that USC is going to have a lot to say on, and that's just the beginning.
All right. Now, when it comes to Dante Wright, this kind of reminds me of maybe 2 cycles ago where a bunch of the Georgia recruits committed to USC early. And then of course, Georgia reeled them back in by about mid-cycle. I don't want to say the tables have turned, but USC is a lot hotter on the recruiting trail than they were 2 years ago. Could we see maybe a reverse here with Dante Wright, one of the top 10 in-state prospects in California? Maybe USC circles back and makes a move on him?
Well, the door is certainly not shut, and it's not shut for Dan Lanning in Oregon as well. So those are 2 programs that we'll continue to monitor in the Dante Wright sweepstakes.
Also reading your article, kind of interesting that USC taking a big swing here at number 1 running back, Kamon Spell. What's the latest with the Trojans and Spell?
Well, I think that they feel like they're on the rise with Kamon Spell, who was recently out in California at the California Power event. There's been a lot of buzz around Notre Dame. Buzz rose around Georgia this fall. He's a former Penn State commit that has had recent contact with Matt Campbell. Greg Biggins talked with Kamon Spell when he was at the California Power event and had a really good update on where things stand in that recruitment. And USC is a school that is going to take a big swing at him and Gabe Jenkins out of the state of Pennsylvania. So I don't know if USC is going to finish with the number 1 class in the country overall, but from a quality, a pound for pound standpoint, when you look at the 15, 16 guys they're going to sign, they're looking for guys that can play anywhere in the country. Honor Falave Johnson, number 1 safety in America. I have him predicted to USC already. Looked like he was close to jumping in. That has slowed down some. USC's coaches are on the road this week. He is one of the guys they're going to go see. Number 2 defensive lineman in America, Marcus Fakatu, currently trending to Notre Dame. Gorney and I have predictions for the Irish for Marcus Fakatu, but USC, one of the programs battling, 4-star safety Gavin Williams, Oklahoma defensive line commit Elijah Harmon. Those are a couple guys that USC set to see this week, along with the number 3 running back in the land from Texas, Landon Williams-Callis. So they're heavily involved with some major targets. I was at the Under Armour All-America game this past week. Osani Gales, the number 10 receiver in the On3 industry rankings, told me USC led. There's always been a lot of confidence around people that have spent time with Quentin Hale at USC that think the Trojans lead. I feel like people feel the same way at Oklahoma and other places, but USC certainly one to watch with Quentin Hale. Eric McFarland, recently reclassified receiver from 2028 to 2027. USC is going to recruit him as hard as anybody. They're recruiting on the board. Trojans just put together a terrific wide receiver class in 2026. There's a standard now at the position that you got to be able to come in and push that room. McFarland certainly could. Eli Woodard out of Arizona. I've talked to him after USC visits. I get the sense they lead for him. Damani Warren's like that hybrid receiver tight end type from Nevada that they have a great shot to land. They're battling Oklahoma, among others, for him. A tight end to know for them, Jace Cannon from in-state, maybe the top player at the position for USC. So a lot of names, not a lot of spots, but the USC staff, in addition to working the transfer portal hard this week, they have not forgotten about high school recruiting. They're on the road doing in-homes. They're talking to prospects, looking to close these guys sooner rather than later.
Yeah. All right. One more name I want to ask you about when it comes to USC recruiting right now, and that's in the trenches, offensive tackle. The number 2 ranked offensive tackle in America, Kennedy Brown. Is there any traction there between USC and Brown, who's out of Houston, Texas?
Absolutely. They've had him on campus before, and he's one of their most coveted targets, regardless of position. Now, you hear more about some other programs. Chad Simmons just had an update on some of the schools that have really made an early move for Kennedy Brown, but USC is prominent. This is a guy that they're going to push for. They've had him on campus before, and they love him, along with Jake Hildebrand, Lucas Roa. Avery Michael's going to get an offer from the Trojans here in the near future. Lex Melangi from Mater Dei. Those are guys that they love up front on the O-line. And on the D-line, you got prime edge rusher KJ Green, who had a great visit to USC this fall. Casey Curry's the number 3 defensive lineman in the country that USC already leads for on the RPM machine. Miles Smith committed to Texas A&M, but they're not going to give up there. Makai Brown's the number 5 edge in the class. Zane Rowe. So the trenches on both sides of the ball, major point of emphasis for Lincoln Riley and company here in 2027.
All right, Steve, we got a great live audience with us right now. So let's do one more segment. Where would you like to go? Do you want to talk about
gotta talk about the
Indiana
Hoosiers,
or
baby.
Oklahoma?
We got to talk about the Hoosiers after their dominant win over over Alabama in the Rose Bowl, sending them to the Peach Bowl now for a rematch against Oregon, 38-3 in the granddaddy of them all. I wish I could give you a Keith Jackson impression. I talked to so many, I haven't talked to this many 5-stars and 4-star recruits about Indiana in my 20 plus years doing this. And each week I would say that there's just more and more blue chip, high profile players that Indiana is offering that have a keen eye on the Hoosiers. They already have their quarterback committed in Jamison Purcell. They're at the top of the list. They're near the top of the list for 5-star receiver Manshun Sales from Indianapolis, Lawrence North. The number 4 linebacker in America, Jalathan Mayfield, has Indiana among his finals. And no program is playing defense as well as the Hoosiers. The assignment football, the physicality that they play with. They are dominant on the defensive side of the ball, and some of the best players in the country want to play in that scheme. Some other high-profile guys that are singing the Hoosiers' praises. The number 6 receiver in the country, Quentin Perrell. The number 9 offensive tackle in the land, Dewey Young, who's been to Indiana a couple times. Miles Smith is the number 1 ranked player in Michigan, number 8 edge in the Rivals 300. He is super high on the Hoosiers. Indiana's trending for a couple commitments at the Navy All-America Bowl this Saturday, live broadcast on NBC. The Hoosiers, 4-star receiver Jahide Brown, touted safety Garyon Hobbs. I think they ultimately end up choosing the Hoosiers. Tay Walden's a 4-star receiver that's high on Indiana. They're pushing hard for the number 5 linebacker in the country, Roman Igwebuike. They just recently offered the number 7 safety in the land, Jaden Appreciate Bailey. They're trending for major in-state guys like 4-star offensive lineman Mason McDermott, 4-star tight end Mason Oglesby's the top player on the board at that position. 4-star safety Caleb Elkins could see himself at Indiana. Rivals 300 athlete Montana Torbert also playing in the Navy All-America Bowl. I have him predicted to Indiana. Wouldn't be surprised if he was in the fold soon for the Hoosiers. The Mallinger brothers on the offensive line from Wisconsin, 4-star Hunter, 3-star Reese. Indiana's done a great job with him. So Indiana, running backs, Elijah Kimball and Isaiah Rogers, Rivals 300 players that I talked to in the last couple of days that were tuned into the Rose Bowl, love the culture around the program, the way they develop their players, the stage they're playing on. And then when they watch them play on Saturdays, the physicality and just the environment, the culture, how these guys are playing for each other. And then if you watch the transfer portal portion of the show, they're getting the support and resources to recruit some of the best players in the transfer portal. We'll see how that bleeds down to the high school ranks as they recruit the Manshun Sales and all these other elite players, high-profile players that we just talked about.
Yeah. To me, the measuring stick, the thermometer, the barometer, whatever you want to call it when it comes to Indiana recruiting is Manshun Sales. And I know you have a prediction in for Alabama, but after Indiana put belt to ass in that game, I think, we're going to start to see some of these conventional recruitments, some of these blue blood recruitments go Indiana's way. And maybe before it's all said and done, Manshun Sales, maybe it's next year when they can get in on a top prospect like that. But the tide is turning. It's been really fun talking Indiana recruiting on this channel. We started sticking our toe in the water in early fall, but now Indiana is a weekly segment on the Wilt Fong Whip Round, on the Inside Scoop. It's just been really fun to talk about. And it can't be easy to be playing football right now and recruiting the transfer portal and high school football. But when you're doing what Indiana is doing on the field, it makes it a lot easier.
Look, it's the best coaching job that we've ever seen. I mean, Indiana has never been relevant in the sport of football in our lives, and really maybe even our grandparents' lives, right, which is, and everything in between. And so the Hoosiers are in the Peach Bowl, in the Final Four, and it's not smoke and mirrors. It's not a schedule. They have some of the best wins in the country. Oregon has 1 loss at home to Indiana. They beat the Buckeyes in the Big Ten title game. The way they play defense is unbelievable. The coaching job that Bryant Haynes and company have done. Everybody knows their assignment. And they play at a high level, fast and physical. They are rarely out of position. They are tough to score on. And with that, if you don't score, you can't win.
Yeah.
And so the Hoosiers, Oregon gets another crack at them in the Peach Bowl. And we saw the way Oregon bounced back from average performance against James Madison to taking belt to ass to Texas Tech, to use your words. And they'll be hungry for this rematch. It's tough to beat a team twice, but only one team in the college football playoff over the last 2 years has won after a bye week, Indiana. So you're certainly not counting Indiana, who 0-7 for everybody else with a bye, 1-0 for Indiana with a bye, to get that second win against Oregon in Atlanta inside Mercedes-Benz. So there's a couple programs trying to get to Mercedes-Benz, Josh, that we got to talk about before we close the show. Texas A&M and LSU. They want to play in the SEC title game. And those are schools that had a lot of buzz at the Under Armour All-America game this past week. And if you start with LSU, they landed the number one edge rusher in the country, Jaden Bryant, who commits to LSU after the Tigers hire Sterling Lucas to come to Baton Rouge from South Carolina, where he had a great relationship. LSU goes out there and lands a surprise commitment from him. And they're in on several other blue chippers that competed in the Under Armour All-America game. I think the first name that comes to mind is Easton Royal. He's committed to Texas. It's going to be hard to flip him from the Tigers, but he said he's going to be watching LSU this year, Josh. And he said, Coach Kiffin hits me up a few times already explaining that they're about to go crazy and tear up the stat sheet. I'm excited to see what they're going to do. I'm going to be paying attention. Albert Simeon, 5-star offensive lineman, trending towards Texas A&M on the Rivals prediction machine, including my forecast. But LSU in the top 3. Chad Simmons had a conversation with him. Coach Wolford coming in from Kentucky to coach the offensive line. They've already talked. He likes Coach Wolford's pedigree. Number one edge rusher in the On3 industry rankings. Zyron Forstaw is a Louisiana native that has LSU at the forefront of his recruitment. Rivals number one ranked corner Joshua Dobson. LSU was the first school he mentioned to me. Corey Raymond, an amazing coach. He talked about that. 4-star quarterback Peyton Houston already committed to LSU. Excited about the future with Lane Kiffin and company. And then guys like 5-star offensive tackle Caden Moss, a Mississippi native who knows Kiffin and company real well. He's been in touch with the new LSU staff. He's looking forward to getting to Baton Rouge down the road. So those are just some of the blue chippers that talked highly about LSU. I know they're trying to hit big in the portal today with Sam Leavitt, but they have a keen eye on some elite guys with the Tigers. You have some questions for me before we pivot to the Aggies and shut this thing down?
It kind of feels like LSU, just the buzz around LSU, it's going to recruit itself at this point. Not to say, Lane Kiffin has kind of been notorious for turning it on at the end of the cycle and landing a few key pieces kind of as signing day approaches. But I feel like LSU, the buzz around the coaching change, I feel like it's kind of recruiting itself right now.
Well, LSU's always recruited at a high level, Josh. Top 10 classes year in and year out. We've seen them compete for the number one class. They didn't bring Coach Kiffin in here to recruit. It is a place that typically recruits itself. There's so much talent in state. They brought Lane Kiffin in to get the most out of the talent. We've seen other coaches do it, win national championships. In Baton Rouge, the previous regime was not able to do that. They brought Lane Kiffin in to win the last game of the season. That's what he's there for. They're obviously going to recruit top classes. If they did not recruit top 10 classes, something is wrong. That's already baked into the culture and environment of the program. It's making sure that these guys play at a championship level. That's why he's there.
Yeah. And, the tidbit on Easton Royal, I don't want to say he made an emotional decision to commit early, but it kind of felt, I don't want to say rushed, but it kind of feels like his recruitment is ongoing. How open is he to LSU right now?
Well, I think Texas does as good a job as anybody of keeping their elite players in the class committed because of what they offer on the field with the trajectory of program, exciting offense, some of the receivers that he's recruited, Sarkisian, and then certainly the infrastructure and resources they have in place from an NIL standpoint. So by no means is this going to be an easy flip, but it looks like LSU is armed and dangerous as well. They got to go out there and prove it on the field, but I do not have him on flip watch by now. He's on he's just keeping some schools warm. Miami is another one that he is keeping warm that he talked about. There were a couple others, but obviously LSU, he's the coveted in-state guy. So he's someone that wouldn't be surprising if we see him on campus or whatever, but extremely tough to flip an elite player committed to Texas as of late in the NIL era, in this new NIL era.
Yeah, Texas has done a phenomenal job, especially with out-of-state guys, the Tyler Atkinson, Justice Terry, Jamie French, guys that were highly coveted by schools within their own state. Texas was able to keep those guys on board with very little hassle. So, it very well could stand. All right, that was LSU. Do you have another team you want to hit on?
Texas A&M.
They were talk a little Aggies.
They got a chance to finish with rivals number 1 ranked recruiting class in 2027. They're one of the early odds favorites. They were well represented at the Under Armour All-America game, headlined by safety Kamari Dorsey. He's the number 1 player in the country at his position in the Rivals 300, and he lived up to those expectations with this play. Cody Belair, analyst, gave him high praise after watching him go through practice. Dorsey arrived wearing a Texas A&M charm on his necklace. He looks locked in with the Aggies. Places like Alabama, Ohio State, Florida, and Georgia certainly going to try and change the pulse. Raylan Henry said he was 150% committed to Texas A&M. The number 8 cornerback in the Rivals industry rankings chose Texas A&M over Alabama and Ohio State, among others. Said A&M was home. 4-star quarterback Jace Johnson committed to Texas A&M. He's got a couple programs he's still keeping warm with the offensive coordinator change, and we'll see what happens at Texas A&M, but he's excited about his future with the Aggies. Visited several times during the fall. Some major targets for them moving forward. Starts with the number 1 overall player in the Rivals industry rankings, John Meredith, 5-star corner. He said Texas A&M and Alabama are tied at the top of his list. Ohio State 3, and Texas 4. Now, there could still be some movement in the new year and it going into the spring and summer, but Texas A&M has to like their position right now. Number 1 edge rusher Zyron Forstall, 5-star offensive lineman Albert Simeon. I think A&M leads for both of those guys heading into the new year. Certainly some programs are going to try and change that trajectory in those recruitments, and some other guys that they're sitting in prime position for that played in the Under Armour game. Olu Babola, an offensive lineman, number 10 offensive tackle in the country from New Jersey. He's already been to A&M 4 or 5 times. I think they're setting the pace for him. Same with 4-star linebacker Noah Glover. They'll keep swinging at Jalen Brewster, Rivals number 1 ranked player. He's committed to Texas Tech. Said he's about 80% committed to Texas Tech. Texas A&M just hired back Elijah Robinson, the coach of the D-line, one of the elite recruiters in the country. So they'll keep swinging for Jalen Brewster. Caden Henderson, the number 2 linebacker in America, is a major target. So is the number 11 defensive lineman Zane Rowe. Oklahoma trending for Zane Rowe right now, but Texas A&M is going to try and change that as they continue through this 2027 cycle.
How big of a class is it going to be? Because we talk about the number 1 class in America. We know it's got to be pretty big. So are the Aggies willing to take upwards of 25 plus in this year's class?
I haven't heard different. I'm not as sure on their numbers. We talked about in the USC segment expecting 15 to 16 for them. I don't know where the Aggies stand right now. I just know that they're in on a lot of the elite players right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be another terrific class coming off a college football playoff appearance for Mike Elko and the Aggies.
Yeah, currently number 4 ranked in 2027. They had a top 10 class in 2026, but it just seems like this year, like you said, it seems like there's going to be a lot of Texas Tech and Texas A&M battles going down, not just in-state, but for some of the best players at their given position. Do you see these 2 teams kind of making up? Are they the heavyweights on the trail right now?
Well, 2 of them. Oklahoma is a program coming off of a great season themselves that sits at number 3 in the rankings. They look like they're going to add a couple more commits at the Navy All-America Bowl. Kirby Smart's never not finished in the top 3. Ohio State has they're always pound for pound one of the best classes in America, and they have the resources to win recruiting battles when they choose to. The David DJ Jacobs, the Chris Henry Jr.'s of the world, and then Oregon. Oregon, a top 3 class this year. They're a perennial top 5 program, top 10 program on the recruiting trail. They're in the college football semifinal. They won the Big Ten last year. People always, Dan Lanning hasn't won anything. Well, he won the best damn conference in college football last year. He just couldn't beat Ohio State a second time, and Ohio State won the national championship. And here they are again, 2 wins away, just pummeled Texas Tech. Oregon is legit on the field, and they are obviously a force to be reckoned with on the recruiting trail. And they use the transfer portal to supplement their roster, and it'll be interesting to see who they rip and roar on the portal, because I think they love their 2 deep. I don't think they'll certainly make some moves in the portal, but roster retention. Oregon got most of their class in the fold by October, November, and they quickly pivoted to roster retention. How do we keep these guys on our 2 deep that we like? Because they love what they got going. They want to build from within. Some of these guys that are 2s, they see being 1s for them and not just replacing them with transfer portal people. So roster retention was a big deal for Oregon. Obviously, roster retention is not a problem right now when you're playing for all the marbles. That transfer portal window ends one day after the one day before the national championship is played. So Oregon looks to be in a good position to retain the guys they want to on the roster. But a lot of that was because they had the resources, infrastructure, and foresight to get out in front of any potential problems. Now they're trying to get Dante Moore to stay in the fold. That is the biggest piece, right? And he's obviously having incredible experience at Oregon. Only thing that could be, if they win the national championship, the legacy play, can you win a Heisman Trophy? And certainly Oregon's got the infrastructure and resources to make things exciting to stay. And do you want to be the number 1 pick in the draft? Is he maybe that this year? Is he maybe that next year? That's also a lot of money to talk about on the table. But Dante Moore, first and foremost in his mind, is winning these next 2 football games.
All right, great stuff. We talked Tennessee, we talked LSU, we talked Texas Tech, we talked quarterbacks. We started the show with Pete Nakos on here. Pete's somewhere working. His phone was buzzing this whole time. So, Steve, when it comes to the transfer portal, what are you tracking throughout the rest of the day?
Oh man, I think it starts with.
You can look at the graphic. Trey just dropped a. This is probably.
It starts with Sam Leavitt's visit to LSU, right? He's arriving in about 58 minutes or so.
Yeah.
In Baton Rouge, they want to get that done. Cam Coleman. We talked about him at the top of the show. Is he going to end up in the Lone Star State? There's a lot. Texas A&M, and Texas Tech are major contenders, but USC is a program swinging. And Chaz Coleman, Ohio State, they were the favorite going into the transfer portal window. Then there was a moment where it looked like LSU and Tennessee were going to go to an area where we didn't know if Ohio State would go, but Pete Nakos reporting today that Ohio State is prepared to battle. And so with that, hard to bet against the Buckeyes for Chaz Coleman, who is expected per Nakos to visit Ohio State later in the week. I reported this morning that he arrived at Tennessee last night, fresh off his visit to LSU.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we will be back. I think we're going to go live again on Wednesday for the Inside Scoop. We have to go live with these shows because the news is happening so fast. So make sure you guys are subscribed because you get notified when we go live. I don't even know when we're going live, but if you're subscribed, you get notified. So Steve, we thank you for joining. Pete Nakos, no longer at the desk, but we thank him. Awesome show. We'll see you soon.